I just played Erma the game, a game based on a long-running webcomic that's been going on for 10 years now, Erma, which is about this ghost girl and her general adventures. I used to read it back in the day, and I loved getting to see the wacky hijinks of this supernatural ghost girl, living day-to-day life with all the ensuing hijinks. As time went on, this comic started to include storylines with a little bit more depth involved, and while I enjoyed it, I eventually did fall off. I think it was around the time when Erma went to Japan to see the rest of the family. I think that was the last bit I read of Erma before leaving it behind. No, I never really fell out of love with the comic. I just moved on to other things. But when I saw that there was a whole game, I just knew I had to check it out. Now, Erma the game is a point-and-click adventure. Basically, Erma's getting ready for the science fair, and hey, why not make a Frankenstein's monster to win the science fair and get tickets to your favourite theme park? This, of course, goes horribly wrong, and parts are scattered all across the area, and you have to get them all back, put the body back together so that you can win the science fair. Otherwise, you'll have nothing to turn in. Of course, it's never going to be as simple as just finding the body parts. You then have to complete whatever objective is necessary to get the body back. For instance, the main torso is being used by a fisherman to attract a deep-sea monster. So you have to give him something in equal exchange. In this case, you end up dressing up a piranha, which he deems as a worthy trade, as there's this myth that the last time the monster was attracted was with use of a mermaid, and, this is probably close enough. One of the legs is carried by your dog, so you have to set up a trap to get it. The arms are held by your friend, so you have to give him something in exchange because he planned on using the arms at the science fair, and so on and so forth. Now, to cut to the chase, anything Erma related is pretty charming. The game is full of these little animations here and there that I think shows a lot of Erma's character throughout, and I think are just fun little things to click around. I must have clicked on, 90% of the things that were interactable, and it was fun just to see what would happen. There are these cutscenes throughout the game as well, which I will admit the one big problem that I had with those is that they are quite blurry. I'm not sure if they've just been rendered at a lower resolution than my monitor, but my monitor's only 1080p, so either I've done something wrong, which could very well be the case, or this game needs to have the cutscenes re-rendered, as it seemed like all the other graphics rendered just fine. It was just the cutscenes. The pointing and clicking for the most part worked perfectly fine. However, there were a few annoying times where I would be clicking on something and nothing would happen, and then I would come back to it later and realize, no, this was in fact what I was meant to be doing. There was even a time when I was supposed to find a flat surface to craft this unholy lunchbox to trade for the arms, and I was like, okay, well, let me try the table. It's not working. Maybe this isn't the flat surface they meant. So I go looking around, and eventually I just got sick of it, and I was like, okay, let me just look up what the solution is, because I can't find a flat surface that'll accept all this. It was the table! It was the table! It just didn't seem to register. And so once I did it again, finally it worked. That was frustrating. In a point-click adventure, you definitely don't want those moments where it just doesn't do what it's supposed to. There are also these mini-games which were half and half. The rock, paper, scissors minigame and the zombie whack-a-mole game both worked perfectly fine. The whack-a-mole one is quite simple. There's zombies and you just gotta bash them with your mouse. Simple as that, really. There's not much more to say there. The rock, paper, scissors one is one where you have to win 3 times in order to get the lunchbox to start crafting it into something more unholy. And, you get... And if you look in the background, you'll see the mice jumping to give you a hint as to what the move is going to be. So if you see them doing little scissor signs, then you know to pick rock, for instance, which I think is a nice little touch just so that there's no guesswork. I mean, you can guess if you want to, there's nothing that's going to stop you there, but I do like that the game gives you that hint. The minigame that I really did not like was the maze. Now, the maze I found to be quite obtuse. It mentioned to look out for hints, so what I was doing was that I was trying to see if there was anything that seemed like a giveaway, the swings, the missing posters, stuff like that. And I would click, and if I got it wrong, I was like, okay, I know next time to go the other direction. Only to then find out that it was changing each time. What you're actually meant to do is you're meant to look at the eyes, the bats, and the crows, each one corresponding to a different direction, and you pick whichever one has the most. So if it has the most eyes, you go forward. If it has the most bats, you go right, and if it has the most crows, you go left. Once I realized that, it was painfully easy, because you don't even know which leads to which, there's a lot of figuring out that you have to go off based off of no real context except that they are there. That's a bit too obtuse in my eyes. Also, the fishing minigame, which requires you to basically tap the edges of the screen to move the fishing hook left and right to try and get to the bottom to get the seaweed. But the fish are randomly placed and the hitboxes are terrible, so sometimes I just couldn't do it and I had to wait for a more favourable layout. There was also this combination mechanic, which was basically you taking all the bits that you'd grabbed throughout the adventure, and once you combine it all together would get you that next body part. For instance, the piranha combined with the dress and the seaweed to create the mermaid. Or you would use the sword to cut off a bit of the football net to combine with the dog treat to make a trap. Stuff like that, which I thought was a neat little thing. Now, I ended up finishing the game in about an hour, though you can definitely do it a lot faster than I did. And after you beat the game, it hints at a new game plus of sorts, looking for the files. Unfortunately, my gameplay experience ended there because the files wouldn't show up in the inventory. I got the first one, which you have to get by clicking on the red man when you're at when you're in your back garden, but any of the other files I just could not get to work. I would fulfill the goals to get the files, but they wouldn't show up in my inventory, so I kind of had to stop there. So, do I recommend the game? Honestly, I'm unsure on that front. Whilst I think the parts with Erma are actually really charming, the series' offbeat humour is great, the animations with Erma herself are quite cute, I think that's a lot of fun, and apart from some, like I said, obtuse bits, which I think some players won't really mind too much, the gameplay itself is perfectly fine. It's just that obtuseness combined with the fact that some of it just doesn't seem to work very well, where I have to draw the line. At the end of the day, if there are parts of the game that just don't work correctly, that's not really something I can recommend. Like I said, it's been going on for 10 years now, so there's a lot to enjoy there. The art in the comic is great, and I think it's really worth checking out. As for the game, if they can mainly just upscale the cutscenes and fix a bunch of the bugs with a patch, then some of the obscureness aside of 1 or 2 bits, that's an easy recommendation at that point. Until then, however, I would be a bit more cautious about this one, even if it is fairly cheap at £4.29.